YouTube, what is up? We are back with another day. We're going to hit some RDLs. We got 7 rep max RDLs. We got some jumps. We got some Bulgarians today. Keep it pretty simple. Getting a good little work day in today. Hit all of our hip stuff today. We also had 500 hip circles this morning. Isometric calf raises. I might show those calf raises just because they were super spicy. And some wall sits this morning. When I program the Tuesday day for my athletes, the main stimulus is those jumps and sprints. So we'll do a ton of sprints to start the day, and then we'll get into our jump session. And then typically, it's a unilateral lift for them that day, so it's not as compressive. It doesn't beat them up as much. My goal is for them to emphasize those sprints, spend all the energy on the sprints, come in here, build some armor. So I'll kind of let's actually show the workout here, kind of build this out and kind of talk about how I go about programming this day, because I think it's something that we do with just a little bit differently. Maybe other people do it too, but kind of our setup here is pop in here. I'll bring this here. You probably won't be able to read any of this, but so we go in here. So we have all of our sprints programmed before. I don't write up the sprints just because we kind of talk about them on the field. Then we just come in, we hit some jumps. We hit a unilateral lift just so it's not as compressive. So they had Bulgarian 7 rep max today. Then we'll hit some armor. So we'll hit the single leg RDLs. We'll push a secondary lift pretty heavy today. So we push those single leg RDLs, bending up those hamstrings. And then it gets into that armor building series, which is here, which is just one set of a lot of reps or time under tension here. So we have the 500 hip circles, which was kind of the main stimulus there in this block. We hit that front splits. We've been building up the splits and the hip mobility piece there on our athletes. So once or twice a week, we're kind of touching that split position with our athletes, hitting the wall sits mostly for knee health and just getting a little quad pump in there, and then those bent knee calf isometrics. But that Tuesday day is more of a armor building day with the main stimulus coming from the sprints. So it's a little bit different. There's typically not a main lift. My Tuesday looks more like the deadlift day just because I'm trying to work on building up my pull for those Olympic lifts. So we'll hit those RDLs today, some Bulgarians. And we already crushed that bottom series with my athletes this morning. It was absolutely fucking nasty. Those hip circles, 500 hip circles, is absolutely no joke. So let's get after it. Let's go. All right, so we hit our square or snake bounds out on the turf. Couldn't record it because people were kicking soccer balls around. But the square bounce, we just got a single leg. We're gonna go straight, sideways, forward, sideways, forward. It was supposed to be a square, ended up being a snake. I don't know why I thought it was square. We're not bouncing backwards. So we had snake bounds there. Now we got these lateral jumps over a hurdle here, pushing the height here. I actually kind of suck at these. These were surprisingly difficult. So we got the lateral momentum here, turn that lateral momentum into some vertical momentum. Over, good little vertical jump movement problem. Let's rip. Ooh, not a good start. Ooh, let's go. Ooh. Ooh. Let's push the height for one more and keep ripping. These are way harder than I originally thought. I thought I was gonna kind of crush these. Kind of getting body, not gonna lie. Ah, my big ass. Ooh, kind of cheated there with that turn, but we'll count it. Let's hit this other way. With those 500 hip circles this morning, my hips are on fire from those. Money, let's go. Ooh, let's go. All right, on to some RDLs. Let's get it. All right, then our pull variation, just 7 rep max here. RDLs, I'm gonna switch into my pulling shoes after we start warming up here. Just haven't done it because I went straight from those jumps into these. Let's rip it, let's go. All right, set number 2 here. This might be like a semi-controversial statement, especially from the fucking nerdy strength coaches out there, but you don't need a super specific scientific reason to program every single thing that you program. I was finding myself when I was showing the board, I got a little nervous. I'm like, well, I need to find a super specific reason why I'm programming every single thing. And I know so many coaches that can do that. They have a great memory and they can be super specific about the specific reasons and the muscles and everything that they're working on every single exercise and why you need to do that for a certain amount of reps. But they miss the bigger picture. They don't know how to tie everything in together. They don't know how to program it when it comes to looking at the athlete in the week, when it comes to working with the athlete for a month, when it comes to working with athletes for years. And it's like a chef that's really good at like grabbing the types of cheese, but they have no idea how to cook with cheese, you know? And I know a lot of coaches that are like that. And then a lot of coaches that get shamed that can make a beautiful meal and they can't tell you what cheese they put in that meal, right? I do think there is perks and there is a certain level of description and reasoning for you programming something and having an exercise in there. But if the reason you put in an exercise is because you want to work the hips that day, or you want to train some hip mobility that day, you need to train the hammies, or you need to train a hinge, or you need to train a unilateral exercise, and that's the only reason you got that programmed in there, that's perfectly okay. You know enough about the cheese to make the meal, right? And I just think a lot of coaches hyper specialize in the certain types of cheese and they don't know how to make the soup. They don't know how to make the actual meal. And you see these coaches like coaching specific parts of like a certain part of a row. And again, I'm not saying there's anything negative about that. It's when those coaches pretend like they're higher up on the hierarchy than other coaches that are actually working with athletes on the day-to-day, working with athletes on the week-to-week, and actually getting results with them. They're not just teaching in machine row. Again, there's nothing negative about knowing the types of cheese. There's nothing negative about knowing the super specific anatomical reasons for doing things and certain exercises. But when you pretend like that, like knowing your cheese, knowing the super specific technical reasons for doing something is above the actual program and the athlete that you're working with, we got issues. And a lot of coaches kind of approach it in that way. And I think a lot of young coaches overemphasize that part of their development when they're going about their continuing ed and learn, rather than working with designing an entire program and working with athletes on the day-to-day and the week. Program hip circles, because a lot of athletes' hips suck, a lot of athletes' hip flexors are weak or tight. And after we're done with hip circles, they feel good, right? And that's the reason we do them. They feel good and they feel stronger and we perform better. And that's why I program them, right? I don't have a super specific, I guess maybe that is a super specific, maybe I'm just in my head about the super specific reasons for what it is. But I just think we should keep the big things, and focus on the soup, not necessarily the cheese. And once you make a really good soup, maybe then you can focus on the specific parts of the cheese. But I think there's a lot of coaches out there that hyper specialize in the small things and miss out on the big things. So just a little rant there. And a rant's more so about myself when I get nervous about describing those exercises. It's like, dude, you get results with this program. The athletes talk about how they feel better with this program. It probably works. You probably don't need a study to back that up per se. So let's RDL, let's get in. It's kind of ironic I did that rant when I'm doing RDLs because I see a lot of coaches like sit there and argue about an RDL versus a stiff leg deadlift. Or I mean Angus and Atlas, I love them both, but they were arguing about what a Zercher deadlift versus a Zercher squat was. It's like, dude, it doesn't fucking matter. I mean, in their case, I guess it did matter because they were arguing about specific lifts and specific numbers there. But at the end of the day, you're hinging, you're squatting, you're picking something heavy off the ground. In 100 years, nobody's gonna give a fuck when if you're looking at like your exercise programming, whether you called an RDL stiff leg deadlift or a stiff leg deadlift an RDL or a Zercher squat versus a Zercher deadlift, right? Nobody's gonna remember that in 10 days, right? Did you get results? Did you get the stimulus done that you needed to get done? Focus on those things, right? And again, I get in the Atlas Angus thing, I guess they kind of the specifics did kind of matter there, maybe if you wanna say it, because Angus was saying he didn't Zercher deadlift or didn't Zercher squat it, and Atlas was saying he Zercher squatted it, he didn't Zercher deadlift. But again, it's still a stupid argument. It doesn't fucking matter, right? Did you pick the weight up? Yes or no? Okay. Are you big? Yes or no? Okay. Are you athletic? Yes or no? Okay. That's all that matters, right? If you're not big, strong, athletic, if you didn't get the weight up, it doesn't really matter. Same thing with like the muscle snatches that I was doing yesterday. Like the stimulus is what matters there. And unless you're a super specific power lifter, which 99% of our clientele are not, it doesn't matter. And especially when it comes to situations like an RDL versus stiff leg deadlift, those things are not measured, right? And a muscle snatch is not measured. Keep the goal to goal, focus on the things that matter, and then I think your life will become a lot more stress-free, right? And training will become a lot more fun. I think we hyper specialize on these things because we don't have anything else to argue about. These feel really good in these Olympic lifting shoes, giving me that heel to actually drive off of. Feels nice. It's like a little constraint to make me focus on that. I like it. All right, another set. Going up in smaller increments, just get a little bit more, warm up that hinge pattern just a little bit more. I typically suck at the RDLs, and I think when I go heavy pretty quickly, I just turn it into a squat pattern, which I eventually will here once it gets heavy. But that's why we were taking small jumps. Let's rip. Oof. That last set started to feel decently heavy, so this one should start to send it. Let's rip. Through on the belt, through on the straps. Let's go. Oof. 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 Let's go. Maybe 1 or 2 more sets at 7 there. Maybe push it, we'll see. Feeling pretty good. Spine gets a little cranky on the 7s, but hammies are feeling good. Let's go. All right, before we hit this last set, I was asked the question, how do how does a unimaginative or like coach stuck in a box get more creative with their exercises, with their agility aims, just to think outside the box a little bit more. And I think there's a couple strategies there. First, you got to think inside the box and master the box first, right? And the best way to do that is to consume a shitload of information. Try a bunch of coaches' programs out. Read a bunch of books on training. Run every program from Seedman to knees over toes to every single program that you got there. Not only will it help you business-wise, just learning about why these programs are so successful, but it'll give you so many ideas and just ways to think outside the box. And you'll try a lot of these programs, and even if it's a trash program, there'll be something there that you like. And a lot of stuff that you don't like, you'll be like, oh, that was trash, I'm not gonna program it in the future. So I think the first way to become creative is to get a ton of data points all around you, right? Just overconsume, drink Kool-Aid from everywhere that you can, and you're gonna reach a point to where it's gonna be too much, you're gonna be too saturated, you're gonna have no idea what the fuck to do with your program, and that's great, that's amazing. That's just a point of your coaching journey, right? Where everything used to be simple, now you consume all this information, now everything's super complex, you have no idea what the fuck to do with everything, and now eventually you're gonna funnel it back into something, and that something that you're funneling it back into is your own original program, and that's where creative ideas come from, right? You're gonna take all these millions of data points that you consumed exercise and program-wise, and you're gonna come up with something individually that is you. And I think the book Range talks about this really, really well, where a lot of the super successful people, there's like two ways to be super successful. You're just a 1%er of 1%ers, and it's really hard. You're a Tiger Woods, you're just the most amazing person in your craft, or you are yourself, right? And you are a 1%er of 1%ers in being you. You have created a niche, you have created a solution, you have created a product that has not been created before, right? And they talk in the book a lot about how these people will have a ton of different jobs, and then they funnel it into like a job that's in between. And how a lot of like the best CEOs and leaders worked at a ton of different positions in the company before, and they see things from a different light. They don't just see things from the straight up business world. They see things from maybe the production side of things or the engineering side of things, and then they bring a business expertise, or they learn a business expertise from there, and you can kind of combine best of both worlds into this new world that nobody has seen before, or new lens of solving a problem that nobody's seen before. And I think that's a really good way, philosophy-wise, of a way of coming up with new ideas, right? Just training. Now, how do you practically do this, right? A super simple way is just picking days in your program where you have to come up with a new exercise, you have to come up with a new warm-up, and then picking other days where your athletes have to come up with new warm-ups and new exercises, right? So on Wednesdays for me, I force myself to come up with a new small-sided game every single time, right? So every single Wednesday for the last 4 years, I've come up with a new small-sided game, and maybe it's small tweaks. This is not a totally new game, but it's small tweaks. So like last week we played bounce pad, where we were playing handball, just a traditional game of handball, and we put pads on the ground, and you had to throw the ball off the pad to pass, right? But you have to come up with a brand new game. So you force yourself, you constrain yourself to be creative, right? I think a lot of times if you just try to be creative, no constraints, it's too much. There's too many options, and you can't really funnel it down into anything that's constructive, right? So I think forcing yourself as a coach in your program to actually come up with something new. In this part of my warm-up or this part of my workout, I have to come up with something new that I haven't created before. And once you start doing that, you get better at doing that, which is really cool. So now in 10 seconds, I can come up with a new game, a new variable, a new way to play, a new rule that makes the game super creative and new. And it keeps the workouts fun and fresh for me and my athletes. And it's definitely a skill set that you build up. Being creative is just like being strong, right? It's a muscle that you have to work. Giving yourself practical ways to work it is something not a lot of coaches do. And then the other way to do things, I think a lot of times when you're basing all of your creativity off your own eyes and your own way of viewing things, it gets really, really hard. If you think about like the best musicians in the world, when they write with a room full of writers, right? They write with a room full of musicians so they can have inspiration, so somebody can see something from a different light and give them something that they've never thought of before. And that's what your athletes are there for. You have 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 to 100 athletes every single day that can see movement, that feel things in a different way, that have a totally different movement background that you have, that can come up with things for you. So a lot of times in my workouts, in my warm-ups, I will put either a variation where every single jump has to be different, every single bench press has to be different, every single squat has to be different. And you watch these athletes create these solutions, and it's super amazing. There's so many that you can take and grab and use for the future of your program. And another really cool way to do it is just have them come up with a warm up for that day, right? Give them a couple tools, tell them they have to, so the way to do it is put out a box and a stick, a PVC pipe, and you say you have to come up with a warm-up out of these 2 pieces of equipment. And watching their brains and minds work and come up with things that you would have never thought of is super cool and super amazing. And plenty of the ideas will be trash, but there's so many of them that are gonna be super good that you can keep for your exercise repertoire going forward. But it's the same as a musician using a room full of writers to be inspired about a song or a melody or some lyrics. And I think it just makes your movement sessions much more alive if you're actually engaging with the athletes and keeping it alive with the athletes that are in front of you. Those are a couple solutions there. Philosophy-wise, consume a ton of information, then funnel into something that is you. And then practically wise, pick certain parts in your programming and warm up where you actually have to flex the muscle of creativity and use your resources of athletes and the writers all over, the movement writers all around you that can help you come up with these solutions, okay? So we're gonna hit this last set. I'm gonna face the camera here because we're gonna hit an Instagram thirst trap and we're gonna rip. Let's go. Oof, come on. Oof, come on. Oof, come on. Oh yeah, that was a ripper. Let's go. Oh, get to the Bulgarians and we'll say bye. Let's go. Woo. All right, third set, last set of Bulgarians. Didn't record the other ones because we had to go a little bit of demon mode to get them done. But third set of 8 here, let's rip. Come on, holy fuck. Come on. Oh yeah, those are ass. Let's go. Other leg. Set them down because I thought my camera angle was terrible, and it absolutely was, so I'm sorry for cutting off my head. I think this camera angle is better. If not, you guys get the gist of it. Let's go. Come on. Come on. Oh yeah, let's go. Woo. All right, we'll say goodbye. Get out of here. So that is a day. We had BP today with the boys. Just posted that video. If you guys are softball fans or just skill acquisition fans, would love if you guys supported those videos. Really trying to get those going. It's what I geek out about the most. It's what I'm most passionate about. And I would love to get paid to play softball. That's the eventual life goal. Huge life goals there. Really making my ancestors proud. But felt good about today. Usually RDLs fucked me up a little bit more than they did today. And those felt good, a little 365 for 7. Typically my back doesn't handle that volume super well, but started off a little lighter, got into those hinges, felt pretty good, felt those hammies. I think these Olympic lifting shoes are really, really nice to allow me to get into like pushing through that heel, which is a new feeling for me, which I like. And then finishing up with those spicy Bulgarians. Can never go wrong with Bulgarians. When I do Bulgarians, my calves always feel like they're gonna cramp first. I don't know if that's just a me thing or if you guys have that issue as well, but my calves, whenever I do Bulgarians, feel like they're about to snap in half. It's probably because I'm just 90% quad, and it's like the one weak point. And it's like my quads can't fatigue, so they're like, fuck it, let's fatigue his calves. I get asked that question too about my calves and quads being big. A lot of it is genetic. I have a dad and grandpa with big calves and big quads. But I started shuffling when I was 5 years old, and that's not a joke, that's not an exaggeration, and this is not a feel sorry for me type story. I hate fucking telling these stories because I feel like it's like people tell me like rags to riches stories. I do not love those stories because it was not, there's just so many worse things that can happen in life. But when I was 5, my parents could not afford daycare anymore, so they brought me to work with them. They got me this little baby shovel. They thought it was funny, but I was legitimately digging holes. And when you're digging holes, it's literally just like you take the shovel and you press with that foot and calf. And it sounds like bro science, but I legitimately probably had 4 million calf raises by the time I was 10 years old. So if you want big calves, go and do 4 million shovel digs with your calves before you before you bitch about your calves not being able to grow, right? I think literally from when I was 5 to 16 years old is when I was 16, I stopped working for my dad because I couldn't do it anymore. Made me want to kill myself. Could not dig holes. I started working at Subway for about a quarter of the pay. But in that amount of time, I got a shitload of reps of quad leg extension into that calf raise. And honestly, like the more I think about it, the three things that are like mega developed on me are my forearms and my calves and quads. So it makes sense. Like I just have a million reps there. And I was just running a hypertrophy program from the day I was born. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, it's not like a massive program that I've done. Nothing crazy that I've done other than just like lifestyle. And I think that's probably an important message. Like if you want to make actual mega gains on something, you want to like grow something that you suck at, it's gonna take a shitload of reps. And most people don't just naturally have something that's just massive and big and strong on them, right? And I think a lot of people like overemphasize the 1 hour in the weight room that they spend, which again, it's a massive potent stimulus that you have in the weight room. But you have 23 hours for the rest of your day that you're doing things. And if all you're doing is typing all day long, like your fingers are probably gonna be pretty dexterous and developed, but the rest of you is probably gonna fatigue. So if you wanna grow something, you wanna get something strong, you wanna get something really developed, hit 1,000 reps of it every single day. Try to find a cool way to do that. And not saying it's the most effective or best way to do things, but it's a way to do things. And it's, my quads are ridiculously disproportionate to the rest of my body. And I think that has a big impact on it. I don't know why I started ranting about that, where the fuck that came from Bulgarians to calves. I don't know what I was ranting about, but felt really good about this training session. Appreciate you guys watching. Keep chopping wood. Let's go.